all eyes because the most recent report about Unrivaled is not good for its second season. So Front Office Sports put out this article today, and they said Unrivaled faces stiff challenges as rating plunged to start year 2. And I will also say, like, shout out to Annie, shout out to Ryan for actually writing an article that is accurate, because I called it out in my last episode that we posted on Saturday that people were very upset that I said this.
Front Office Sports just dropped a bombshell that nobody in the women's basketball world wants to talk about. Unrivaled second season ratings have absolutely cratered. We're talking about a league that was supposed to revolutionize the offseason, that promised to keep players stateside with six-figure salaries and equity stakes. A league founded by two of the biggest names in the WNBA, Breanna Stewart and Napheesa Collier. And now, less than a year after their triumphant debut, the numbers tell a very different story. Opening night year 1 pulled 310,000 viewers across TNT and True TV. This year, 75,000. That's a 43% drop. But here's where it gets worse.
For the second-year league, ratings on TNT were lackluster. Unrivaled's opening slate on January 5th, which kicked off on a Monday afternoon game, averaged 175,000 viewers in 2 games. That aired both on TNT and True TV. The 2 True TV exclusive games on January 5th averaged 32,000 viewers. That's very low. Games on January 9th averaged 139,000 viewers across TNT and True TV. The 4 games that aired January 10th and January 11th averaged 71,000 viewers on True TV.
Those True TV exclusive games on January 5th averaged just 32,000 viewers. 32,000. For context, some college women's basketball games on ESPN Plus pulled better numbers than that. The 4 games that aired January 10th and 11th on True TV averaged 71,000 viewers. Meanwhile, the regular season average last year was 21,000 on TNT, peaking at 77,000 for the one-on-one tournament final. So what happened? How does a league lose nearly half its audience in 1 year? The answer isn't complicated. The novelty wore off. Year 1 had the advantage of being completely new. A different court setup, full court 3-on-3 basketball, unique rules, and most importantly, the endless speculation about whether Caitlin Clark would join. Unrivaled milked that Caitlin Clark possibility until the very end. Remember that cryptic announcement where they kept repeating the number 22? Everyone thought they were teasing Clark and possibly Agia Wilson joining the league. Then Clark's team shut it down the next day. She was never coming.
Just have 22 minutes of your time tomorrow, and they kept saying 22 at different points in this like social media announcement, and a lot of people were like, oh my gosh, they said multiple 22s, like Caitlin and possibly Asia could be joining this league, and then that just didn't happen. And I do believe it was the very next day that Caitlin's team came out and was like, she won't be playing in Unrivaled. And I do actually think that Caitlin Clark's it would cheapen her brand to do any of these off-season leagues. I think it would cheapen her brand if the WNBA is still a thing. Now,
And that's the fundamental problem Unrivaled faces. They built a league for the off-season, but the WNBA just offered players something Unrivaled can't match anymore: legitimacy, and now comparable money. The new CBA that's being negotiated right now would give WNBA players an average salary around $500,000, with max contracts exceeding $1 million. That's more than what's been reported for Unrivaled salaries. Yes, Unrivaled players get equity, but equity is just a percentage of a percentage. It's not liquid cash. You can't pay your mortgage with equity in a league that's pulling 32,000 viewers on cable television. Here's what makes this particularly awkward for the league's founders. Napheesa Collier is one of the lead negotiators for the WNBA Players Association. She's literally at the table arguing for better conditions, better pay, better treatment from the WNBA, and she recently said, quote, "I know what it takes to build a sustainable league. That quote is going to age like milk if Unrivaled's ratings continue this trajectory."
On the court each week and are going to continue growing our audience while showcasing the best women's basketball players in the world. Leagues aren't built overnight. And this was actually kind of a stark contrast to what Napheesa Collier had to say recently, because she was asked about the WNBA the CBA negotiations, and she essentially said, like, I know what it takes to build a sustainable league. And I don't know, I feel like that quote is gonna be used against her, because Unrivaled honestly didn't matter so much in these negotiations until they started saying how much better it was.
Alex Bezell, whose Collier's husband and heavily involved with unrivaled operations, tried to spin the ratings decline. He said, "We're proud of the product we're putting on the court each week and are going to continue growing our audience while showcasing the best women's basketball players in the world. Leagues aren't built overnight." And he's right about that last part. Leagues absolutely are not built overnight. The WNBA has been building for 28 years. The NBA took decades to reach mainstream popularity. But here's the problem with that defense. Unrivaled positioned itself as the solution to the WNBA's problems. They didn't market themselves as a complementary league or a developmental opportunity. They marketed themselves as superior, better pay, better accommodations, better treatment of players. They made it seem like the WNBA was this outdated, poorly run organization that didn't value its athletes. And now that the WNBA has stepped up with a CBA offer that includes salaries higher than Unrivaled can pay, suddenly Unrivaled looks less like the savior and more like just another off-season option.
This CBA, this new CBA, and the offer made from the WNBA, the salaries that they will be making this year in the WNBA is more than the salaries that the men were making in their 30th season in the NBA. And I promise you also, like, people wouldn't be watching ratings like this. They wouldn't be pocket watching. They wouldn't be like, oh, how does Unrivaled make money? How do they do this? How do they do this? People wouldn't be this tapped in, this lasered in, if it wasn't such a big thing at the negotiating table. Of course, people are going to start comparing it because it's like the founders of this league tried to make it seem like it is so much better than the WNBA, and I feel like that's kind of disrespectful. Yes, they did a lot of things right.
Breanna Stewart tried to downplay the ratings concern, saying, "TV ratings are one thing for sure. Obviously, you want them to be consistently high, no matter if we play on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or Monday, and know that we have a space of our own here." In the League of Sports, people aren't typically used to seeing women's professional basketball at this time, unless you're watching EuroLeague or something like that. And that's actually a fair point. The off-season is the off-season for a reason. Casual fans aren't looking for basketball in January and February. They're watching NFL playoffs, college basketball conference play, and gearing up for March Madness. The hardcore women's basketball fans who watched year one came back for year two, but they represent a much smaller audience than the casual viewers who tuned in out of curiosity last season. Those casual viewers didn't return, and that's the audience you need to build a sustainable league.
Which has a capacity of 17,000 to 20,000 fans, depending on the event. Unrivaled has said that those games are sold out. So we'll have to see, like, that could be really good for them. That could be really good for them if they're able to pack out a big arena like that. So let's just see. That's all I have to say about that. But I do also want to quickly talk about Project B, because they also just made an announcement this week. And it says Project B to make stop in Tokyo in April of 2027. So you're probably wondering, April of 2027, like, what do you mean? Like, that's going to run into the WNBA season. So in this article, it says there will be...
Now let's talk about Project B, because this is where things get really complicated for WNBA players and owners. Project B just announced they're making a stop in Tokyo in April 20. That's right, in the middle of when WNBA training camps would be starting, especially if the league moves forward with their plan to extend the season and start earlier. Project B is going to run from November through April, with players competing in different cities for 10-day tournaments. They've already signed Nneka Ogwumike, who is the WNBA Players Association president, along with Alyssa Thomas, Joel Lloyd, and Kelsey Mitchell. Here's the issue. If you're a WNBA general manager, are you going to offer a max contract to a player who's going to be playing competitive basketball for 5 straight months overseas, not returning to American soil until April 5th, and then expecting to jump right into training camp? Because I wouldn't. The risk of injury alone makes that a terrible investment. The lack of rest and recovery time makes it even worse. And the potential for that player to be mentally and physically exhausted before the WNBA season even starts. That's a deal breaker for any competent front office.
In college, because it's literally during the college season. So could it be something where it's like another professional league? So if players, you know, they have to do 1 year after high school, so maybe they don't want to go to college, maybe they don't want to go to the G League Ignite, maybe they don't want to go to Australia, so maybe they could go to Project B. However, I don't think that would actually work, because you're only playing in these little mini tournaments. I don't think that's enough basketball for a prospect who eventually wants to play in the NBA. So, okay, so probably not college players, probably not FIBA players because they are also in season at this time. Like,
Project B also announced they'll have men's and women's tournament games, which raises a whole new set of questions. Where are these men coming from? NBA players aren't playing in off-season leagues. College players are in season from November through April. EuroLeague players are in season. G League players are in season. So who's left? Retired NBA players? Influencers? Guys who play in that 3-on-3 men's league that nobody watches? The men's side of Project B doesn't make sense unless they're targeting a completely different demographic than professional basketball players. And according to sources close to Project B's operations, the league isn't even primarily focused on being a basketball league. They're building a streaming platform to showcase multiple sports, with basketball being just one component. That's a very different business model than what Unrivaled is doing, and it's a very different value proposition for players.
Or not, is putting pressure on the WNBA to step up to the plate. And it's not just about paying the women. It's not just about that. It's not about gross revenue share. I think that they are asking for too much when it comes to that. But it is about stepping up to the plate and really putting their foot down as like, hey, we're the premier league. You guys got to get on board. We have been building this league for 30 years. These other new leagues haven't. We've seen from Unrivaled, it's not that easy to just get viewership right away, to just sell tickets right away, to get people interested in a league right away, even when you do have some of the top players in your league. And I think it's the same.
So here's where we are. The WNBA is offering players average salaries around $500,000 with max contracts over $1 million. That's more money than Unrivaled reportedly pays. It's definitely more money than most overseas leagues pay, and it comes with the legitimacy of being the premier women's basketball league in the world, a league that's been building its brand and infrastructure for nearly 3 decades. Unrivaled is facing a 43% ratings drop in year 2, struggling to maintain the excitement that came with being new and different. Their biggest selling point was keeping players stateside with competitive salaries, but now the WNBA offers comparable or better salaries for a longer season with significantly higher visibility. Project B is asking players to commit to 5 months of international travel during what should be their off-season, returning to the United States just weeks before WNBA training camps start. That's a massive ask, and it's one that could cost players money if WNBA teams decide they're not worth max contracts because of the injury and fatigue risk. All 3 of these leagues are competing for the same pool of elite talent, but only one of them has 28 years of history, established television deals with major networks, and the infrastructure to support long-term growth. The WNBA isn't perfect, far from it. There are legitimate criticisms about how the league has been run, how players have been compensated, and how certain stars have been marketed compared to others. But the WNBA's problems are fixable with better leadership and more investment. And based on this new CBA offer, it looks like they're finally starting to fix them. Brianna Stewart and Nafisa Collier deserve credit for creating Unrivaled. They identified a real problem, players having to go overseas to make decent money, and they built a solution that took vision, courage, and an enormous amount of work. But creating a league and sustaining a league are 2 very different challenges. The WNBA has survived for 28 years despite terrible television deals, minimal marketing budgets, and constant questions about profitability. They've built something that endures. Unrivaled has built something exciting, but excitement fades, novelty wears off. And when the ratings drop by 43% in year 2, you have to ask hard questions about the business model. Can this league survive on 71,000 viewers per game on True TV? Can they attract major sponsors with those numbers? Can they continue paying players 6-figure salaries when the revenue isn't there to support it? The same questions apply to Project. Can you build a sustainable basketball league when your players are only available for 5 months out of the year? Can you compete with the WNBA for top talent when you're asking them to sacrifice their off-season recovery time and potentially risk their WNBA contract? These are the questions that need answers. And right now, based on the evidence we have, the ratings data, the salary comparisons, the scheduling conflicts, it's hard to see how either Unrivaled or Project B poses a long-term threat to the WNBA's dominance. They might coexist as complementary options for players who want extra competition and income during the off-season. But the idea that they would replace or even rival the WNBA, That's looking less and less realistic. The WNBA's new CBA offer proves that the league is willing to invest in its players when pushed. Average salaries of $500,000 and max contracts over $1 million represent a massive increase from the previous season. That's the kind of money that keeps players stateside without needing to join upstart leagues with uncertain futures. That's the kind of money that makes the WNBA the clear priority for every elite player. So what happens next? Unrivaled needs to figure out how to stabilize and grow its audience, or it needs to accept being a niche product for hardcore fans. Project B needs to prove it can actually deliver on its ambitious promises without burning out players or conflicting with WNBA's schedule. And the WNBA needs to finalize this CBA, get players signed to new contracts, and prove that it can be the premier destination for women's basketball without competition from off-season leagues forcing its hand. The next few months will be crucial. If the WNBA players accept this CBA offer, it fundamentally changes the landscape. If Unrivaled's ratings continue declining, it raises serious questions about the league's viability. And if Project B launches successfully without causing scheduling chaos or injury problems, it could open the door for more off-season opportunities. But if I had to bet on which league will still be around in 10 years, I'm taking the WNBA every single time. Because at the end of the day, staying power beats novelty, infrastructure beats excitement, and 28 years of building a brand beats 2 years of trying to disrupt it. So where do you stand on this? Do you think Unrivaled and Project B can coexist with the WNBA long-term, or are we watching the beginning of the end for these off-season leagues? Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit that subscribe button if you want more honest coverage of women's basketball without the spin, and I'll see you in the next one.